And so I've been eagerly wanting to open my own ABLE account as well. So I've been pushing for us to move as fast as possible as well. I'll talk a little bit about some of the technical details around this, how they work, talk about where we are here in the process, okay? But and if you do have a burning question that's not making sense, I'll take it. Feel free to ask. So ABLE accounts are the result of the ABLE Act of 2014. It was federal legislation that was signed by President Obama. Many of you might know it was the result of years of advocacy, about 10 years, primarily among parents of children with autism and Down syndrome who really wanted financial equity for their children. They wanted their children to have the ability to save in their own name. And so what it did, this act, was allow states to create their own tax advantage savings plan and administer that so that for people with disabilities, so that they could save and also not have any impact to their public benefits, their means tested programs, their eligibility for that. So that's the big game changer here. These were modeled after college savings accounts. So some of you might be familiar with California's Scholar Share program. That's our 529 program. So they operate very similarly. In the case of a college savings account, you're depositing money, you're saving it tax-free. You get to invest that money as well, and then you use the expenses tax-free for qualified expenses. And in the case of a 529, those are educational expenses. In the case of an ABLE account, those are what we call qualified disability expenses. And I'll talk a little bit more about how those work. But, you know, it's a game changer because it allows people to save over that $2,000 threshold, in particular for SSI. You can now, with an ABLE account, actually save up to $100,000 and still maintain your eligibility for SSI. You can also, in California, save up to $475,000 and still keep other means tested programs in addition to Medi-Cal. Right, so if you're, yes, the 100,000 cap applies to SSI. If you're not utilizing SSI, you do have the ability to save up to $475,000. Yeah, is that clear? Okay, covered that. So yeah, we named our program CalABLE. We had a state statute that also had to be implemented to set up our agency, and it generally mirrors the federal statute. And that has been kept intentionally broad. The federal statute is broad, both in terms of eligibility and in terms of what you can spend your money on. And that was purposefully so, because the whole idea behind this legislation, ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. So the whole idea was that you should be able to save and spend money on anything. I think the federal statute actually says anything that will improve your health, independence, or quality of life. And that's very broad, right? We are a national program, so some of you might be familiar. There's actually 30 states already open that beat us to the punch. Lots of those accept residents from other states. There are some programs that just allow their own residents to participate. As we've gone through the process, like I said, we haven't deterred people from saving in another state. You can always roll your account back over to California once we're open. And so a lot of people have taken advantage of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the differences you want to look for if you do end up doing that. Okay. I'm not going to go too much into all of this because I want to really get to the guts of it, but suffice to say, we spent a lot of time here in California. Something that was different than our competitors was that we out the gate did a lot of outreach with our population. We really wanted to, there's something to be said for being the first out of the gate and being quick. We really wanted to design California's program with feedback from the people who will be using it. As a parent of a child with disabilities, I know that, governments often make decisions on behalf of people with disabilities without their input. And we wanted that to be different. So we did design a program really that we thought would best serve the needs of our population. So here's our vision and our mission. Our vision is to provide greater financial security to Californians living with a disability. And our mission is to meet the diverse needs of our customers and their families. We pledge to be customer-driven, accountable, and a trusted partner in providing financial services. We really want to earn folks' trust is the bottom line here, because even as I go out today, people will say, I just can't believe that I can save over $2,000 and keep my SSI. I don't believe you. We know that this is something that's it's a shift, and a cultural shift. And so building trust was a huge deal for us. And so these weren't done in a conference room with the three of us. These were developed during meetings like this, where people said, this is what we want. And again, our values. We're going to be flexible. We're going to be humble. We've been transparent during every part of this process. People have a lot of questions about our delays and fees and things like that. And from the very beginning, we have been open to answering questions. We answer calls every day. We have a Facebook page where we answer questions every day. So if people really want a voice in how the process is playing out, they want feedback, we're open to that. And the other thing I should say about this too, we're really fortunate in the sense that our structure, every state structure is a little different. Some are run right out of their treasurer's office. Other programs merged with their 529 program. In our state statute, they essentially created a board. We report to a 7-member board, and it has folks, some ad hoc folks that are, representative of the financial agencies that provide oversight in California. So like Department of Finance, Controller's Office, the State Treasurer's Office. But we also have representatives on our board that represent the community themselves. So Director of DOR, Department of Rehabilitation. We've got the State Independent Living Council folks on our board. We've got the Department of Developmental Services and the State Council of Developmental Disabilities. So all of those folks have been at the table with us as we've gone through the process, really helping us form this program, which is something that's unique from other states. Does anybody have any questions so far before I yeah?
Transfer money from the 528 to the 529 if you realize that, I guess this person is not actually going to go to college.
Yeah, and actually, good question. I'll talk about this in a minute. They actually, the recent tax reform, federal tax reform that just went through, not so favorable in some regards to people with disabilities, but it was very favorable to ABLE. And they are going to allow, as part of that, rollovers from 529 college savings accounts to 529A ABLE accounts. There is a drawback in the sense that it will, and I'll talk about caps and stuff, but it is subject to the annual contribution limit, the yearly contribution limit of $15,000 a year. So it's not a direct rollover if you've got more than $15,000 saved in a 529 already, but you would be able to move that amount over. Yeah?
I have a son that is working at Knott Hill Foods, and he had to join the union to be part of that system. And he has the opportunity of saving money in a pension plan. The pension plan money, can that go into a CalABLE account?
Yep. So that's another big deal with the money comes from anywhere. There's no limits on where the money comes from. It can come from your own. Is there feedback? Or are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Okay. It can come from your paycheck. It can come from a family member. It can come from another account. I can block the screen. Like an IRA. I think I'll abandon my notes and just go over here. Is this better? Yeah, so you do have the ability to do that. It can come from a friend. You could have like a GoFundMe link that you send out and say, hey, do you want to contribute to my ABLE account? Yeah.
Okay, so you had said it can come from any source. So my son receives Social Security disability, not SSI.
Right.
And so would that also apply?
Yep.
From the tax standpoint, because there's no limitations on spending.
The money can go in. One thing I just always like to clarify is that, and I don't know that I'm not very well versed in public benefits programs. We're learning all the time. I didn't come from that background, so I'm still learning a lot, and people always educate us here. SSDI, they don't have a means test, but do they have an income test? No. SSDI benefits? No. So yeah, so the money could go.
You could just, I think the only advantage would
That's right. Yeah. Okay, I'll take one more and then I'll move on. Right. Sorry, so she's asking that 475 amount, is that aggregate or what, total contributions, or is it the total balance? It is the balance, to my understanding. Yeah, which is different from and that goes for the 100,000. Yes, the balance has to be below $100,000, including interest earned. Otherwise, your SSI is suspended. Now, with the annual cap, the $15,000, you can earn interest, and that's fine. That's just a limit on contributions for that year. Okay. All right, so talk about eligibility. One unfortunate aspect of this is that you have to have had the onset of your disability prior to the age of 26, which obviously excludes quite a few folks. There is federal legislation that has been pending for a while. It's been reintroduced 2 times at the federal level that would raise that age cap to 46. So if that's something you're interested in having happen, advocate for it. And we can talk more about how you can help do that. I do like to specify with that, people sometimes associate that with diagnosis. Okay, so say you have and mental health, psychiatric conditions are qualified for these accounts. So as an example, you're diagnosed with schizophrenia at age 30. Well, but did you have the onset prior to age 30 or symptoms prior to age 30? You could have a doctor, there's a self-certification piece. You can have a doctor write a note that says the onset of this disability occurred prior to the age of 26. It does not necessarily mean the time you were diagnosed. So you could still qualify even if you were diagnosed after 26. So assuming you meet the age criteria, then you want to see, are you eligible? Do you have eligibility? You don't have to be receiving it, but do you have eligibility for SSI or SSDI? If you do, you automatically qualify. If you don't, you can still self-certify. And again, that's that doctor's note piece. So a doctor basically says, this person has X disability. It occurred prior to the age of 26, and that's it. We don't collect the doctor's notes. You save a doctor's note in the event that you're ever audited by either the SSA or the IRS. There's HIPAA rules around collecting notes and that sort of thing, so we're not collecting any diagnoses. When you go through our system, which is still in development right now, but we've had an opportunity to look at it, you'll basically self-certify. You'll check a box that says, I certify that I meet the criteria. And then you'll just want to make sure you have a doctor's note. So I talked a little bit about contribution limits already and totals. We've talked about this before the act. A person collecting on SSI cannot have more than $2,000 in their savings. Now you can save up to $15,000 per year. Also, the $15,000 per year will change from year to year. That number is tied to the federal gift tax. So like last year, the max contribution was $14,000 per year. So it won't always be $15,000. It will change from year to year. And then up to $100,000 in total before your SSI. And it says or California means tested benefits program. I'll talk about that in a minute, is impacted. And we will in our system have some safeguards built in, so people don't have to worry about losing their benefits if you're getting close to those thresholds. If you're getting close to the $100,000 threshold, you will be pinged to say, hey, and then at that point you probably want to, do I want to accept more contributions? Where am I at? So that you will, not have your benefits put at risk. Did somebody have a question over here? Yeah.
Is it $15,000? If my wife and I, can we get $15,000 each?
No. It's total contributions, regardless of the source.
Are you going to talk about the income addition? There's like 12,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So just a few more basics. You can only have one ABLE account. We specify that because with college savings, you can't have more than one account. So only one ABLE account per individual. These accounts are they can function depending on your situation. They can function like a savings for long-term savings. It might case, I didn't ever open a 529 for my son. He's higher functioning on the spectrum. I don't know what his future holds. Will he go to college? But now I'm going to kind of use it like a college savings. I'm going to kind of save for that purpose. And if that doesn't pan out, then I can still use that money without taking a tax penalty for just about anything else that he needs. But other people will be using this for day-to-day basic living expenses, for housing expenses. And we'll talk a little bit more about qualified disability expenses too. So it does have a transactional component. And again, these monies are tax-free as long as you're spending them on what we call qualified disability expenses. And those are, again, any expense related to the designated beneficiary as a result of living a life with disabilities. I think that language comes out of the statute as well. So the categories, again, were kept intentionally broad. There's a very long list. I actually have some fact sheets that I brought that goes more into detail about categories and expenses. But suffice to say, they're very broad. This is just an example. Education expenses, employment training, your housing. There's an asterisk there, and I'll talk about that. Transportation, healthcare, funeral and burial costs. If you need a personal assistant, assistive technology, I mean, literally, it goes on and on. If you can make a case that it benefits your quality of life or your independence, it's a qualified disability expense. People say, what can't I spend my money on? You know, I don't want to make a mistake. And it's not defined. I mean, again, the onus is on the individual. We're not collecting receipts. We're not going to be auditing, is this a qualified expense or not? But but the IRS could come in, decide to audit you, and say, you need to make a case for how this was a qualified disability expense. We tend to say there's some stuff that's obvious, right? Gambling, alcohol, what we like to call the fun stuff. Travel, yes. So people say, like, can I go to Disneyland? Okay. 5 minutes. Oh boy, I better rush. Yeah, you can. Yes, you can go to Disneyland. Does it improve your quality of life? Sure. Can you use the transportation for Disneyland as an expense? Yes. The food? Yes. If you had to take an assistant with you? Yes. Can you pay for your whole family to go to Disneyland? It's probably a little bit more of a gray area, right? So you guys kind of get it. I'm going to move on. Yeah. Oh, no. Nope. No, because the beneficiary owns the account, and the account can also be administered by not just that person, but a parent, a guardian, a power of attorney, or a conservator. Yep. I won't go into this. Suffice to say, we had a lot of challenges here in California getting launched. It all revolves around state contracting laws. At the end of the day, it's going to benefit the consumer. We have a really high, so all of these programs you'll see are required to contract with a third-party financial services administrator, an investment, someone to manage the investments, administer the program. In California, you have to go out to bid. It's called the RFP process. You have to see who bids, and then they have to meet the criteria laid out by the Department of General Services. And we went through this process a couple times, and we didn't get firms that would meet our criteria, meaning they wanted to do things like cap their liability. They didn't want to serve as what we call a fiduciary to the participant, which means if it blew up, the participant is not protected. And so it wasn't acceptable to us. Some other states do have some looser contracts. And so at the end of the day, people are, frustrated that we're not open, but we will have, again, a program that was really designed with our participants' interests, and it will be safe and it will be secure. But we're hoping mid-April. So stay tuned, because we're going to have a big launch event. We want people to get to that and that sort of thing. I won't go too much into our features and benefits. You can read our materials to find out about that. I mentioned e-gifting as a benefit. We'll have what we call a prepaid debit card. It's not a debit card that will have direct access to your full account, but you'll be able to load amounts to your prepaid card. This is like, I'm thinking of my son. I wouldn't want to give him, it would be great if he can go use his own card. I'm not going to give him a direct line to his account, but if I want to load $30 on it so he can go with his friends, get a coffee, whatever, then I can do that, right? Yep, next one, not with the debit card, which is an advantage over some of the other states.
When is it taxed?
Sorry?
When is it taxed?
When is it taxed?
Yeah, the fees taxed, once you pull them out?
So
An IRA?
So, yeah, if you're moving, you have to look at those rules in terms of if you're taking withdrawals from other plans. Those rules will apply. We won't be able to help you with that. We do have fees associated with these accounts. Every state does. Our states, we aimed for low fees. They're pretty middle of the road. It's going to depend on the investment option that you choose. We do have more investment options in some other states. And so if you pick a really aggressive, say you invest aggressively and you're trying to get a high return, you're probably going to pay a little bit more in fees. Overall, or if you want an FDIC insured option, a safe option like a bank insured option, there's no fees associated with that. Everybody has an annual maintenance fee. This is the cost of running the program. Ours is $36 per year. The range is up to $60 per year across the country. So we're pretty middle of the road. And I won't go into all the other fees. They're small. Suffice to say, I mean, there are fees, but they are relatively affordable in the grand scheme of things. And if you want more of a breakdown, I'm happy to talk to you about how that plays out. If you go to something called the ABLE National Resource Center, they actually have a chart of all the different plans that are operating. Here's their fees, here's their investment options, here's their features. And so in each case, you're kind of shopping. You're kind of like, what best fits my needs? We might have a little bit more of an expensive plan compared to Tennessee, but we also have some advantages. And one of those that I really want to make sure I mention before I get out of here, here's all the states that you can research. While we were waiting for all these contract issues to play out, we managed to pass some really important legislation. These plans have what's called a Medicaid payback provision attached to them. And so that means that if you are utilizing Medicaid services, Medi-Cal, upon the death of the beneficiary, okay, want me to stop? Can I finish this one point? I gotta finish this one point because it's really important. Upon the death of the beneficiary, Medicaid has the ability to recoup to claw back from these accounts, any monies they spent on you during the time that the account was open. We were able to eliminate that in California. So, yes, and we're one of 3 states to do that. So if Medi-Cal is important to you, not having that money clawed back, you need to get in a California plan. You can't do it in Oregon. Oregon and Pennsylvania were the other 2 states that passed this, but it applies to their residents only. So we did do some stuff. And I'll talk about some of these other things if you want to come talk to me. Tax reform changes, again, it allows the rollovers. It's going to allow people who are working to save above that $15,000 cap. You'll be able to save now up to a total of $27,000 if you're working. And then you also now get access to what they call the Savers Credit, which was something that used to only be able to be taken if you're contributing to retirement. Now you can actually, and there are some rules around that. It's complicated. Tax reform stuff is brand new. We're all evaluating it. It's still we don't have the final word on any of this stuff, but these are some of the provisions that passed. And then outreach, if you want to connect with us, have us talk. If you're associated with a group, you want us to come talk. We love doing presentations. We have a Facebook page where we're really active. Like our Facebook page, share our Facebook page. We really need to get the word out to as many people as possible, because if we get a lot of participants in the California program, it's going to drive down the cost for everybody, ultimately. And that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get her to do a webinar for us then if we have more time.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, great. We'll
I
set
love
that
that.
up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks to the panel and thanks to Dr. Christie for this morning so far. So,
Thanks.
over there. What I'd like to do now is invite you to go get your lunches. Why don't we do this section? Give them a couple of minutes to get out of the room. So you guys head to the cafe out that door and to the right. And again, if you first one of those we guarantee lunch, pause, and wait.
She doesn't know. I gave her this one. Because they have
Every time,
How are you? Good, Lisa.
and this group, go ahead and go get your lunches.
I've been called. And so you know what later the IRS triggers bonds and you make sure and unfortunately for 1 month. So I'm having to pay back. But you know, get all the sick money. Oh no, no, that's $288 a month or something like this. You know, I went down. No, that's my son, my father. They go back to but and then when you have this money, just spend it down. You know,
This was advertised as whether you're not in the regional center or not.
yeah, and they're gonna want to. They're gonna. Well, I don't see yours to have an answer for it. Tracy. Make sure you spend
And he gets his partial retirement. Oh, you know, were you headed towards lunch?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
spend it down, but track it. Make sure you say, we have rest of the account and we have but it's not like that. The debts are gonna be over time. And if it's over 8 years, at some point it's gonna trigger. You know, so yeah, he had no clue about what he could do for jobs, how to find money.
I didn't even know it was going.